Good afternoon, everyone. My computer decided to pause at the most awkward point there. But welcome to you all. My name's Siwan, and I'm the head of the Scaling Award at the Fair Education Alliance. And I'll be supporting this afternoon's session alongside Cheyenne, who is also with us, who leads on our Innovation Award. A huge welcome as well to all of you for this session on building your brand. We're delighted to be joined today by Amanda Jones from an advertising agency called The Gate. And she's also on the board for a previous Innovation Award winner and innovation partner, the Grub Club, who's also a member of the FEA. Amanda's going to be leading the session this afternoon, but we're very excited to have you all with us at the Impact Festival, which is taking place until the 29th of April. So please do tweet about the event using hashtag Impact Festival and tagging us at _ the FEA. We'd love to hear your thoughts and see what you're taking away from the sessions. So, just before we kick off, I want to share just a little bit of an introduction about the Fair Education Alliance. As most of you know, the Fair Education Alliance is a coalition of over 200 organisations across the business, education and charity sectors, collectively working to make education fair in England. In addition to our collective action and policy work, we run 3 award programmes to nurture and scale impactful solutions to end education inequality. And 2 of the awards programmes are currently open for applications until the 18th of May, which is very exciting. And if any of you, and for those of you who are early stage entrepreneurs, we would really encourage you to apply and to share these with your networks as well. So both awards give £15,000 salary contribution and 1 year of support to anyone who has a great idea to make education fair. FEA members can apply for the Entrepreneurship Award, which is on the screen currently, and there's also some sessions there on screen that will help early stage entrepreneurs to develop their idea and to learn a bit more about kind of myth busting behind entrepreneurship. We also then have the Innovation Award, which is open to the public. And kind of very similar, we have sessions that are specifically targeted to this early stage entrepreneurs and about the Innovation Award itself as well. So please do kind of join those sessions. They're a chance to learn more about the Impact Festival, about the awards, about the FEA, and to hear as well from the previous award winners and our current 10 award winners as well. So we're going to get started now, and to kick off in true FEA style, we're going to break you into small groups of 2 or 3 for a very short networking session, and as a kind of starter activity for this session as itself. So when we split you into groups, we'd like you to introduce yourself and your organisation briefly and just discuss your reflections on this question. So the question we would like you to take is, what difference does your organisation make in the world? So, Cheyenne, if we are ready, we're going to break you into those groups and we will get you started.
Okay, can everyone see that? I see some nodding, that's great. Notes. Well, first off, yeah, thanks everyone for joining today. It's really lovely to see so many people here. I am Amanda, so I work at an advertising agency called The Gate, a small agency in London. We work with sort of brands across the country, and my experience is in research and strategy development for brands, sort of big and small. So I've worked on brands like Ariel, Mini, currently working on FemFresh, plus charities as well. So it's kind of Macmillan, a countryside charity, Sue Ryder, and also ones in the educational sector. And I've done a lot of work with the Fair Education Alliance and formerly Teach First when it was combined with Teach First. So I know a lot about the kind of the educational setting, sort of working with schools, especially. I know how hard they are to get to listen and sort of talk to, and kind of also the importance of connecting with young people, whatever that age, whether that be sort of, you know, secondary school or primary school. So what we're going to be covering today, so it's going to be a lot of you guys doing the work. There's quite a few breakout sessions, so you'll be going back into those smaller groups. And the idea is that you can come away from this session with sort of elements of a brand, and some sort of food for thought in terms of how you put that into action, across both kind of how you talk about your organisation and then how you develop those really important marketing materials. And most importantly, all of this could be done completely for free if you wanted to, or certainly at a very low budget. So it really is sort of designed to be kind of sort of plug and play in terms of the stuff that we're going to go through today. So I've done those slides, and just to sort of let you know the award winners that I've worked with most over the years, although I've worked with quite a few different ones now. So I originally got to know Teach First, when it was Teach First, through the Girls Network, which is a very established award winner. Can you see my screen? It's telling me sharing's paused.
We can see, I think we can see your PowerPoint, as in when we're seeing the ribbon and the,
oh, sorry,
not necessarily the slide.
Yeah, it's not on slideshow mode yet.
That's weird. It is for me. I had this problem before. I think Zoom's changed some settings, and I'm got a bit behind. Weird. Okay, let's just try. I think I was trying to do it so I could see my notes at the same time. Sorry, everyone. Really smooth. I heard that apparently if you have IT faults, it makes you more endearing as a person. So I'm just testing out that theory. 1 second.
You'll have to all let us know in the feedback, and we can try and see if we can confuse our event manager with the feedback about endearingness of the speaker.
Okay, right, let's try this now. How's that?
Yeah, we can see those now.
Amazing. Great. So, so these are the organisations that I've worked most with through the Fair Education Alliance. So the Girls Network I've been involved with for quite a number of years. Actually, the founder, Charlie Young, is one of my oldest friends. And I also, as Siwan said at the beginning, I am a director at the Grub Club, which is an organisation running cooking courses for families, and also Tales Toolkit, which is a storytelling kit for the primary or for young people, and also maths for parents as well, right at the beginning. So I know that there was maths makers in the room, so I know getting people engaged with maths as a topic can sometimes be challenging. So those are just an example of some of the award winners that I've worked with over the years. So quick question to sort of the room, and you can put this in the chat if you don't want to sort of come off mute, is why is a brand important? Why are you all here at this webinar today? What helps having a strong brand? See if I can. Oh, I just gave away the answer. Trying to get to the chat. Oh, sorry, I can't seem to see the chat. I'm really failing.
I can let you know, Amanda, if there's anything on the chat. I can be a chat monitor.
Thank you. Well, in terms of kind of the penguins kind of give it away a little bit, is that one of the sort of main things about a brand is distinctiveness, but above that is kind of sort of awareness and knowing that you exist. And I think actually very importantly for small organizations, it's that credibility. So having a kind of distinctive and consistent brand when you go out and talk to people, whether they be schools or young people or anyone in the educational sector, having that brand and that identity and sort of what you stand for really clear in people's minds gives you that credibility, it gives you that gravitas, and it means that you're going to be more memorable. So if you've got that funder or that teacher who's trying to think about kind of, you know, sort of who they had that conversation with, you've got those cues around you and your organisation and what you do, then they're more likely to be able to remember you, to be able to find you and kind of reach out and get in contact or sort of continue a conversation with you. And this is a quote that I always quite like, is that we can sort of think of brand as it's a logo and some colours and that's it. But actually it can be a lot more than that. And really actually the way that the brain works, it's all about kind of familiarity and very much a brand is sort of creating a story, much like you would with a person that you meet, is kind of you have certain expectations about how they behave, or certain service or sort of level of quality that you might get from them. It might be memories that are attached to that brand. If you think about well-known brands that you have, sitting in your around your home, there might be sort of certain experiences that you've got connected with them, and that's exactly what you're trying to do with your brand as well. And then ultimately, all of this combines so that you're more likely to be chosen over perhaps another organisation. Certainly, there's that kind of preference and sort of positivity around you and your organisation. And really, sort of the main thing to just take out is what's the story you're telling. So what are the characters that are involved in this story? What's the setting? Kind of what sort of emotional journey are you taking people on? Now that sounds all really kind of fluffy, I know, but it's about, I suppose that the most important point is just making sense and it being something that is engaging and people can understand. And what we're going to do now is go through what are the sort of ingredients of a good story that can help you think about what your brand story is that you're telling to people in a way that's hopefully doesn't feel too fluffy and is a lot more actionable. So the first one we're going to talk about is brand character, and we're going to look at sort of the visual identity and what you can do from a sort of logo and design perspective. Then we'll talk about something which is I call brand purpose, but it's kind of that sort of a one line why you exist. And if you can get that, if you can crack that, then it unlocks so much and it makes it so easy for you to create marketing materials and talk about yourself and your organization in a sort of confident and engaging way. So going on to brand character first off. So essentially a brand character is like, if your organization was a person, who would they be? What would they be like? And it's really interesting whenever I've worked with sort of startup organizations and especially founder-led organizations, like I'm sure most of you are, is that it can be difficult sometimes to differentiate yourself as a person, as a founder, and your organization. Where do you end and where does your organization begin? And this, lots of you will have sort of really gregarious, amazing personalities, and that will come to the fore in your organization, and that's brilliant. But as you start to grow and develop and it's beyond just you need to then you need to put this into words. You need to sort of create this character so that as you bring new people into the organization, they can behave and act and speak in the same way that you do. And it's true to your organization rather than perhaps you as that founder. So having a personality description can really help, and crafting it now, even if you're right at the early stages of kind of sort of fleshing out what your organization does and who you are, it can really help both other people when you bring them on board, but also yourself to make sure you've got that consistency in how you speak and behave. So to give you some examples, so all the way through, I'm going to use examples from bigger organisations that you will know, and also ones within the educational sector from the FEA. So some examples of some brand character statements. So Macmillan, your warm and reliable friend you feel confident opening up to. If you're going to compare that to, say, Cancer Research UK, for example, that might be the kind of, your expert and informed scientist who knows all the answers. Kind of, you can see how Macmillan is a warm brand that is all about kind of that sort of support for those with cancer, is going to have that sort of character statement, which is about that kind of someone who is sort of engaging and makes you feel at ease. We take something like Tales Toolkit, so looking in the educational arena, the playful storyteller who brings fun to learning and life. And the reason for that is, I'm sure most of you don't know of Tales Toolkit, is that it's a storytelling kit to help all children, however confident they are in literacy and speaking and writing, to be able to tell a very simple story using the kit that they're provided with. So the idea is it's kind of bringing fun to that sort of learning experience and telling of stories. Or the Grub Club, which is all about cooking courses in a fun, you're sort of learning to cook healthy meals in a fun and engaging way. It's a friendly foodie, inspiring families to eat well. So there, the word friendly is really important, because if it was just the foodie, then perhaps it would be someone who's not so approachable. But it's actually that idea of kind of, it's someone who welcomes you into their kitchen and is really excited for you to enjoy good food. So hopefully you can start to see how a statement like this could shape the way that you speak and behave. And we're going to have a bit of a breakout in a second and start having a go at doing this ourselves. But getting to this straight away can be quite difficult. So, so a good sort of stepping stone is to think of a celebrity. If your organisation was a celebrity, what celebrity would it be? Now, it doesn't need to be sort of a celebrity that it's got like direct, it's like sort of directly comparable. So if you're in, you know, if your organization is focusing on science, then it doesn't need to be someone who is a scientific figure like Einstein. It could be someone who just emulates your organization and the character of your brand. So often it's more the personality than the job that they do, although they might have a link somewhere. So for Grub Club, which was the cooking courses, so Aisling chose Davina McCall, and the reason for that is because she's you know, much loved TV presenter. She's really good at helping people, kind of encouraging people to open up. She's a lot of fun. She just speaks her mind, and she actually also coincidentally loves food, and the kitchen is her favorite room in her house, and kind of she's all about cooking, but that's kind of was sort of secondary to the personality that Davina exuded. And for Tales Toolkit, I always forget this guy's name, but this is he is now a daddy blogger, but he was the lead singer of McFly, and he was chosen because he is just sort of, he's zany, he's kind of always making up like stories or songs and kind of engaging his YouTube following through that. So that felt very akin to Tales Toolkit, which was all about storytelling. So thinking about a brand character, and I'm going to put you into breakout rooms in just a minute to start thinking about how you do this. But essentially you start off with that celebrity. So maybe you've got a celebrity in mind. If I'm not actually someone who really knows celebrities that well, I can walk past someone who's famous and I wouldn't even recognize them. So if you don't really know celebrities, then just think of a person you know. Think of, it might be a friend or someone, just someone who you think emulates your brand in some way. You kind of admire and you think, oh, if my brand was a person, they would be that person. Also think about that person that you've chosen, that you've got in your mind. What personality traits do you use to describe them? You know, are they fun? Are they warm? Or are they informed, knowledgeable, reliable? Those sorts of values and personality descriptors. And then you can use those words to start getting to that brand character statement. And I'll put them in the chat so you've got them for your breakout rooms. And then the idea is then you've got this sort of idea of the personality and description of your brand and your organization that you can then use whenever you're creating materials or talking to someone about the organization. So I'm going to stop sharing now, and so we're just on gallery view. Any clarification questions before we go into the first breakout room? Oh, thanks. Great. So we've got you've got the task is in the notes. So think about which celebrity or person is like your organization, write down those personality traits and use that to try and craft a brand character statement and put some examples in there from Airbnb and Grub Club. And about sort of 8 to 10 minutes, and I'll be popping in to check everyone's okay, and also pop back and ask us a question if you want.
Awesome. Perfect, Amanda. I'm starting the rooms for 10 minutes. Yeah.
How did that go? Jumped into one room, so heard some interesting things, thumbs up, being shared. If you feel comfortable and would feel like sharing your brand, where you got to with either the celebrity, the personality values, or some sort of brand character statement, you can either come off mute and say it to the group, or you can put it in the chat, just so we can sort of see where people got to.
Oh, I'll jump in there, Amanda. I think I was in the same room as Leila and Christian, and you know, obviously it's hard to get to the end of this little task in just 8 or 10 minutes. But what was interesting for me was that the three of us actually seemed to value very similar personality traits like perseverance, focus, resilience, and you know, determination. So I thought that was interesting because we're trying the work that we're each doing. Maybe Christian and maths makers have a little bit of an overlap, but Leila is in a different area. And still, for me, it was interesting that we had those similar personality traits. And I think our characters those were very varied. I was thinking more along the lines of a sports character, maybe somebody in para-athletics who would have that determination and perseverance and so on. Christian went for a singer, isn't that right, Christian?
An actor.
An actor, that's right. And well, Leila had quite a different background for her character, somebody who's been a bit notorious, but still very determined. So we didn't get as far as a sentence capturing our organizations yet.
Great, thank you. I think on that, you're sort of saying that you had some overlap in terms of characteristics, personality traits. That's quite common. So especially because all of you work essentially in the same sector. So there'll be certain kind of values or characteristics that you all hold true, like equality, for example. So I would advise sort of trying to stay away from those words that are going to be kind of what I call sort of hygiene factors, because they're not distinctive and they're not necessarily ownable by you, and they're not going to aid that memorability. So what got really interesting was when you started talking about the different kind of behaviors and personalities of those celebrities that you mentioned, and how they were really quite diverse, and that's like where you want to focus on when you start to develop your brand character statement. And I've just been told we're running about 5 minutes behind, so I just mentioned Payman said in the chat, building the intangible road for reaching a brighter tomorrow. So that's I really love that as an expression. I would say that my advice would be to kind of keep crafting that and see if you can make it sound like you're describing a person. So someone who's building an intangible road for that brighter tomorrow. What are they doing to achieve that? That's kind of what they're doing. So what personality creates that? So is it about that kind of perseverance beyond all else, or is it about seeing the positive when everyone else is kind of stuck in the darkness, for example? Right, I will keep going, but I hope that was useful for everyone. Just to say that you'll get this PowerPoint afterwards, so keep revising the brand character statement. Although it feels like it's sort of a nice to have, it's really helpful, because once you know who this sort of organization personality is in your mind, it's much easier to start writing in that voice, and you'll start to see the consistency that goes across all of the different marketing materials that you're creating. So now going on to visual identity. I said I'm not a designer by trade, so I'm not going to be giving you lots of tips on how to kind of create the perfect logo. But what I am going to do is sort of give you an idea of kind of what are the basics of your sort of visual identity for your brand that can just help drive that sort of brand awareness and memorability and distinctiveness that we know is so important. So first off, I mean, it's probably kind of obvious, but going back to that kind of gravitas point and credibility. So design does so much hard work for you. So if you've got, you know, a flyer, which is just white text in a Word document with a little logo at the top, that's going to not look that different from an email that someone might be getting, a head teacher might be getting from one of their colleagues, for example. Whereas if you've got something which has got, you know, it's got consistent colors across it, it's got maybe some graphic elements, it's got a nice font, and it doesn't look like your kind of sort of standard black and white document that might get sent around on an internal basis, then the more memorable and stand out it's going to be. And that doesn't mean you need to hire a brand designer and you need to pay lots and lots of money to get something absolutely perfect. It's actually possible now to design things for free and by yourself. And I have actually done that for a few friends who have started up their own businesses. I've made adverts and flyers for them on Canva. Don't know if any of you have tried that or discovered that, but it's a really great, to see some of you nodding, really great platform for building, and it helps you to create sort of, you know, logos and things like that, to sort of create things that look more professional. And just to show you how simple it can be, so let's take IKEA, one of the you know, most famous brands in the world. So their brand visual identity can basically be boiled down to 3 things. And they've got their logo, which has been very similar since it kind of first started, which is just their name, kind of in sort of in lights, and then they've got their font. And actually this font, you can get this for free on any kind of Word document. It's called I can't, Futera, I think. But the reason that they chose that is because they're a global brand. They found that actually having like a custom font that people had to download onto their machines to create, whether it be like kind of a, you know, a poster for a local store event, meant that there was a lot of inconsistencies across the organization. So they decided to choose a really accessible font that everybody could get, whether you were working in India or Egypt or wherever the store was. So that could be something for you. You can just sort of open up your Word and choose a font that you feel is appealing to you, and that's already bringing sort of personality into the brand, and sort of is distinctive from Calibri or Arial or one of those custom fonts. And then also color palette. So IKEA is actually really straight. They've just got this blue and this yellow. And I think intentionally they are very bright poppy colours, and that's because IKEA is about that kind of bringing fun to the everyday. So they really wanted to have standout versus quite a lot of their competitors are sort of black and white in the category. So it was really sort of differentiating them from other brands in the sort of interior design world, which can be a bit chic and not quite so accessible and fun in their design. And then just to look at another brand, a bit more modern in its take and a bit more flexible. So is Spotify. So again, their logo is they've got their name. Interestingly, they've taken an element of their brand and they've visualized that to create a graphic device which they use everywhere, which is a kind of you know, sound reverberation, because obviously they're mainly predominantly about audio. And this is then a graphic device that they use kind of all across their platform. So you see it when you log into their app. It's kind of the sort of loading screen. They use it as sign off on all of their advertising. It's kind of there in lots of different places across their brand. So some kind of graphic device, this is what I call something like this, a graphic device or some sort of little design which represents your organization, can be really helpful. So it might be that you've got something which you think is really unique to either the product that you offer, or perhaps it's something to do with your brand character that you can kind of create a graphic element to, and we can start talking a bit about what that might be in your breakout rooms. In terms of a color palette, what's interesting with Spotify is they're a little bit more complex than the IKEA one. So they've got what they call like first impression colors, which is this green, white and black. So that would be, if any of you use their app, familiar with the Spotify experience, then it's quite black and white and green focused. But they actually found that was too restrictive for them. So they then created this broader color palette, which they use for their advertising. So what I'm trying to say here is that it doesn't really matter how many colors you have, but it's about choosing some primary colours, and those will be the ones that are in your logo. They'll probably be in your headers. They'll be the ones that are kind of most associated with your brand. Yes, you can introduce other colours, but sort of do that at a secondary level if you feel like you need it as you're creating more things. Because the more sort of consistent you are with colours, again, it's kind of just aiding that memorability and standout. And I think another reason that Spotify went to this sort of more broader colour palette is actually they were finding that the sort of black and white and green could be quite oppressive in terms of kind of perceptions it was sending. So they deliberately chose a friendlier kind of sort of more standout color palette, so that they kind of had that sort of fresh, modern, brighter look versus what they had before. And then this is an example from your world. So this is the Grub Club's visual identity. So we've got the logo here. So took the pepper, went through a lot of vegetables and fruits before we got to the pepper. So it was actually a informed decision to choose a pepper, and the reason for that being it's an ingredient that most people have in their fridge, or certainly it's one that they recognise and kind of know how to cook with. So it sort of got that sense of accessibility straight away from the logo. There was also a choice about the typography. So we had this kind of cursive script for headings and in the logo, which is kind of more friendly, kind of fun and bubbly, but it's not hugely legible. We couldn't use it across everything because that would kind of impact the gravitas. So then we went to Roberto, can never say it out, as our sort of main font, because it was quite straightforward. It was it's very easy to read, but it still has got that sort of the roundness to it, but brought a friendly edge, which was important, because it's all about having fun while cooking. And then the color palette, we've got fresh pops of color that are inspired by everyday, apart from, I've never seen an orange mushroom like that, apart from the mushroom orange, but everyday ingredients, again, sort of inspiring our color palette. And then again, we've got this primary color palette like Spotify has, and then there's a secondary color palette where we needed it. So this was actually developed with a designer, but there's no reason why you can't create things like this yourself on Canva. And I'm not sure where all of you are with your branding elements. I'm sure some of you have already got some sort of visual elements that you're using. So it might be that the discussions you have in the breakout room are about talking about what works for you, what's not working, and how might you improve it or tighten it, or perhaps kind of looking at the spectrum of communications that you already have, looking to see what are you using consistently, and what's starting to sort of look like it doesn't quite fit into the same visual world as the other communications. Another thing I wanted to talk about quickly was photography. So I know that when you're starting out, photographs are really hard to get. You might have a friend who's great at taking photographs and you've got oodles of them, or it might be that you've just got a few that you've taken on your iPhone yourself. It might be that you only managed to get a few shots from one day of using a photographer. But another thing that you find is that because everybody is using kind of real world shots, especially sort of in the educational setting, there sometimes can be very little to distinguish photographs from one organization to another. Especially if you might be working with the same kids or it's a similar sort of intervention. So one thing that the Grub Club did to help with this is they sort of created some rules when using photography, which helped to aid that memorability and distinctiveness. So one, they always had the product. This is the kit in the photographs. Another thing was they introduced these kind of graphic elements, which is sort of cutting out the photographs, so they could overlay text and quotes using the brand colors. And another thing is they wanted to show kids using the kit and having fun and it being active and something that you play with, because that was also important to their organization. So you could think about some rules that you introduce when using photography or other elements of your brand that you can bring in to help create that distinctiveness that you need. So what we're going to do now is kind of talk about what might be your distinctive visual assets. So in groups, kind of what have you got already? Maybe if you're able to look at some of your competitors or compare and think about how distinctive is this, especially from a color perspective. Does this stand out versus other organizations that are similar to me? And then think about how can you better use your sort of visual identity across all of your different communications and things that you're using and your photography. Great, welcome back everyone. And I've had when I've been in the breakout rooms, questions from a couple of attendees, and so this is for Shaiwan and Siwon, in that how does this session relate to the application for the Innovation Award? And how much of a brand do you need for that application as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think there are a few sessions that are specifically geared towards applying to the award, and that those focus more on application writing and so on. And in the application, for example, because you're constrained by text, you can't really show your brand, like there are no images that you can show. So those are specifically geared towards the application. There's another range of sessions, those are more geared towards building and developing an idea in general. So those could be like theory of change, or business model, financial planning, brand. And I think this session fits into that bucket, which is like developing an idea, not necessarily kind of applying specifically to the award, if that makes sense.
Hopefully that answers the question for people.
But also just maybe to emphasize that you're not expected to come with a brand, and similarly, you need to have an idea of the type of business model that you would be hoping to utilize to take your idea to market, but it's not expected that you have all of the answers. The incubator is there to help you develop those and to kind of really strengthen that when you're on it. But I think having an idea of what your brand identity might be, or having an idea of what business model might work best for you is what we're looking for, not necessarily all the answers.
Yeah, great. And sort of on that, I know that in the group I was in, there was sort of a real range of, in terms of visual identity that people had already developed for their organizations. Were there any kind of questions or thoughts people wanted to share in this group, or kind of ask sort of opinions on the visual part of their brand?
I think that one of the things that stood out to me, Amanda, sorry, my name's Christian Massard. I'm very new to all of this. So, you know, all of the talks and things I've listened to today have been massively helpful for me as well, and just to improve my knowledge. But I think one of the things that stood out to me, what you said earlier, was the fact that how the logo, how representative it could be for the brand, and, you know, taking it forward, and, you know, the impact that it can have in showing what your brand does, and what you know, what your business is actually looking to do as well, and making sure that you have something that resonates and that represents it in an effective way. That's something that definitely made me think. And then even that has also sparked ideas of, you know, potentially different names that you could also align with that as well, which would, you know, bring everything together. So yeah, that was really helpful, and yeah, thank you for that.
Great. Yeah, it's an interesting exercise actually, to start looking at logos and start thinking about what is it about that logo, that what is it representing of that organization. So it's a nice way to kind of start thinking about, then, for your organization, what might be the visual way to bring it to life. And when it comes to names, best thing to do is just throw as many down on a piece of paper as you possibly can. And in terms of like types of names, there's lots of resources online, sort of, and I can send you some example websites which are useful. But often there's like ones which are kind of does what it says on the tin. So it's kind of, you know, it's a word, it's a descriptive sort of name, and that can actually be very helpful for new organizations, because it does quite a lot of the job for you. Like Fair Education Alliance, it's pretty clear what it's about. So that's a sort of quite a straightforward way to do names. Or you can get a lot more creative. So you can do things that have got that are maybe got intrigue in them, perhaps they're more of a metaphor, or you can look to sort of create a whole new word in and of itself. But what I would say is that the more sort of creative you get, the more you then have to do with sort of describing what your organization does around it. So it's always a sort of balancing act. Any other sort of observations on visual and visual stuff of the brand? Yeah, great. Well, I will I'll move on to this is the sort of the chunky bits, which is thinking about brand purpose, which is getting to that really pithy statement or sentence that you can use kind of across materials to introduce your organization. It kind of really gets to the heart of why you exist and the difference that you make. And it really is about kind of what are you changing in the world. And usually when I speak to like laundry detergents and you know, tuna brands, it's kind of a little bit more superficial than the stuff that you guys are doing, and you really do have a reason to exist in the world. And so articulating that as clearly and in an emotionally engaging way as possible is so important, because not only does it kind of create that sort of that instant impression with people, but it also distills what you do. So you don't get into the nitty gritty of, well, we go into schools and we have a 1 hour session and we work with 6 to 7 children, and, you know, kind of going into the nitty gritty of exactly how you deliver the program. This is way above that, and it's kind of much more at a sort of the benefit to society and to the people that you're helping, rather than what exactly it is that you're doing. So we move on actually to the examples, because I think as soon as you see the examples, it starts to make a bit more sense. So if we look at Macmillan again, so they help people reclaim life from cancer. It's all about the fact that you know, someone with cancer is not just someone with cancer, they're kind of got their whole lives as well, and it's all about reclaiming that and kind of still having an enjoyable life, and with support from Macmillan. Or if we take Airbnb, We believe in a world where people can belong anywhere. It's all about people opening up their homes so other people can stay in it and experience the city like a local person would. So this sense of you can have belonging even if you're in a totally new place. And that got them to the advertising campaign, which was all about belong anywhere. And it actually led to things like, so they changed their T's and C's a few years ago to make sure that everybody who uses the Airbnb platform signs sort of Inclusion and Equality Act agreement, because they didn't want to have any discrimination on their platform or through the sort of the rooms that they rented, because they believe in everybody belonging anywhere. And we were looking in the educational sector, so Tales Toolkit, we exist to unlock stories in every child. So this idea of kind of helping children to unlock their sort of literacy skills. So instead of being quite straight and back to the facts about it's a storytelling kit for to develop literacy skills, it's about unlocking that story that every child has inside them if they just have the confidence and the support to be able to access it. Or Grub Club, we fuel children's minds through their tummies. And the word tummies was actually sort of the most powerful aspect of this brand purpose, because it's so unusual for the educational sector to be using a word like tummies. And it's something that Aisling, the founder, she found worked really, really well in pretty much every setting. She would say tummy in like pretty much the first sentence, because it captured people's attention and got them thinking. And wanting to know more. And then she could go on to talk about the program, the behavioural change based sort of cooking course that she ran, and then more of the how. So we're gonna actually, I'm just going to go on a little bit and show you a little bit more of how kind of you can apply that purpose statement, so you've got a bit more of the context, and then we're going to go into the final breakout session, which is where you'll start thinking about defining your own purpose statement. And again, this will be the beginning of it. You're not going to be able to crack it in 10 minutes, but hopefully you can get the start and help each other to get there. But I guess sort of a few tips that are important to think of while you're going through it is making sure it's unique and distinctive. Pretty much everyone says we exist to unlock the potential in every child, or something like that is very, very common. And so it's kind of making sure that it's whatever it is that is at sort of the heart of why you exist is unique to you and isn't just a category. So all of you are here to sort of end educational inequality in some way. So there's likely to be things about the potential of all children, or kind of ending that inequality isn't necessarily unique to you as an organisation. So I'm just going to quickly, sorry, I just want to show you how it comes to life. This one is the best one. Tales Toolkit was we exist to unlock stories in every child. So the way that they use this statement was they put it across quite a lot of different elements that they made. So this is an event stand, and it was there at the top as a kind of sort of drawing people to the stand, but it had a little bit more about the kind of what. And then she also used it as a heading of perhaps say the flyer, Tales Toolkit unlock stories in every child. So I'm just wanted to show you how it starts to sort of go out across marketing materials, but what we're trying to get to now in the breakout sessions is this sort of statement. So it often, you can start it with we exist to, or we, some sort of action. Quite often is a nice way to start it. So we're going to go into the final breakout session now and have a think about what these statements could be.
Perfect. I'm going to make these slightly shorter, so around 6 minutes. Does that work?
And Simon, could you just pop the instructions in the chat?
Yeah, I'll just wait for Simon to do that.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you want to copy that or just have a look to know what you're doing in the breakout room, and then I'll just start. Yeah. You're on mute, Sivan.
And Amanda has landed up with Helena in every breakout room.
And there's one room with just 2 people. That's interesting.
I think.
Did someone leave? I
Yeah,
feel like-
must have. 1, 2, 3.
Because it showed 3 people exact, like it was an exact match. Someone must have left.
Lauren has left.
No, that's possible. Yeah.
Anybody feels comfortable sharing where they got to, I'd love to hear any of your working progress purpose statements.
I'm happy to share mine because it's something I've already had, but actually listening to you, I feel it's a bit generic. And I got some great feedback from Christian. So the one I had is we empower parents and educators to help children thrive. And then when I shared the what do we do, and our what do we do is School of Sophia is an innovation hub and modern day sanctuary for parents and educators. We offer transformative events, online courses and community to deepen your connection to yourself, each other and the world. And Christian sort of pointed out the kind of the more uniqueness of that statement and to somehow bring that into the purpose statement, which had felt more generic. And I thought it was really helpful, actually.
Yeah,
I'm not quite sure how to do it, but
Bruno agrees as well. I would say that the last bit that you said, the deepen the connection, that's really powerful language. We exist to deepen the connection and everything else. Perhaps I don't know if that quite works as it is, but that is interesting to me. So one tip that I think is actually really good for this is that quite often you can get into describing what you do as an organization. So that's very helpful, but it's what you want to try and do is focus on the benefit. So why are you important? What is it that you're creating and you're doing? And be really strict with yourself. Keep asking, am I saying what I'm doing, or am I saying why this is important and why I'm making a difference? So to go back to the examples, just to kind of sort of help to show that. So we fuel children's minds through their tummies. I mean, we weren't literally injecting vitamins into children's brains. We were teaching them how to cook good grub. But what we were doing was that because we believe that good nutrition is really important for concentration and kind of sort of, and even just, you know, feeling well enough to be able to learn. So that's why it was about fueling children's minds through their tummies. And because that was really important for that attainment. We exist to unlock stories in every child. Again, it was a kit. The kit wasn't like, there was no element of unlocking stories, but this idea that every child has a story within them that they can then, through this kit, can access and use to kind of to talk and to learn literacy skills. So use that as a kind of as a benchmark to assess your line. And I'm aware of time, so I think I'm going to have to quickly. If anybody wants to share their purpose statements in the chat, I can comment on them as they come up. I'll certainly try my best. I'm just going to quickly do the closing points. As you saw earlier, I kind of whizzed through the sort of end slides, but just to go back over sort of marketing materials and putting this all into practice. So I know it's really overwhelming when, especially if you're a founder and you're working by yourself, or perhaps you're really only at the beginning of this journey. So much you could do. You've got like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and that's just social media. You've got a website, you want to make something for schools, maybe you want to do an event when the world opens up. It can be really overwhelming. What I would recommend is less is more. You don't need to be on every single social media platform. Be where you need to be. So if it's all about reaching young people, maybe you're only on TikTok. If that's, you know, with GDPR and data protection and everything. But if it's about reaching teachers, then maybe actually it's much better to focus on an email program and getting into all of the kind of sort of educational publications that are out there and focusing on PR. Website is definitely very helpful. So the reason a website is helpful is because pretty much everyone goes there to check you out when they hear about you, or if they get a flyer from you or whatever. But beyond that, it's just create things that are useful. Don't beat yourself up about not being able to update Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and YouTube all at once, because you really don't need to. And then it's about taking the stuff that you've learned and applying it across your communications. So you've got your visual identity, you've got your brand character, you've got hopefully some sort of a purpose statement, and then you can use that to start creating assets which are working for you. So Grub Club, using their logo and their tagline, and this kind of sort of dynamic way of using photography. And then you saw that go across also the flyer that they created. I would say that a flyer is probably the most used resource of pretty much every educational organization of your size that I work with, because you can send it as a PDF to schools, you can hand it out to people. It's just a really, really nice way to get across what you do in a succinct way. And it really is less is more when it comes to information. So don't squeeze everything on there. If I was going to be critical, I would say that there's way too much text over here. Nobody's going to read that probably, sorry Aisling, and she won't mind me saying that, I said it to her face. So just really sort of, you just want the key bits of information that is going to make an organisation or someone reach out to you for a second conversation where you can go into a lot more detail. So the key information would be why you exist, a little bit of practical stuff about what it is that you actually do, the benefits. If you've got any impact statements, great, include them, so you've got them over here. And ideally some sort of quotes, either from students or people that you've worked with, or if you know someone like a leader in the educational field or whatever area that you work in, that can be very helpful as well. And then photography and your sort of graphic elements. Dell's toolkit, as I showed you, so she's also got these little illustrations that she uses as part of her brand toolkit. So this is her event stand. This is her flyer, a little bit less, but pretty much the same thing. We've got purpose statement here, what it is, benefits, quotes. And then she developed a brochure, but you don't necessarily need to do that. And then finally is just some handy resources if you don't know about them already. Fiverr, good place to find affordable designers, copywriters, web developers. Canva, I think someone wrote in the chat that they love it already. WordPress is great to host your website. And then these are some places to get royalty-free photos and illustrations if you don't have your own, of people, not eeple. Sorry for that spelling mistake there. So that is everything. Hopefully you've got a bit of a sense of kind of what the personality is of your organization, what the visual elements that are working for you or what you want to develop more, and most importantly that kind of that why you exist statement that you can start to put across sort of lots of different marketing materials. Any questions in the last final few minutes?
Sorry, Amanda, were those slides going to be emailed out or?
No, you had to remember absolutely everything. Never going to be seen again. Yes, of course. Yeah, that we sent round to everyone.
We'll also have a recording as well that you'll be able to access after the event as well. Great. Okay, well, we are very near the end, so I'm going to just firstly say a huge thank you to Amanda for that session, and ask you all to come off Zoom for a second to give Amanda a big round of applause to say thanks. Woo. Thanks so much.
Thanks for contributing, everyone. It was great. The sessions I were in, breakout rooms, were really good, so really inspiring stuff.
Great. So Cheyenne is going to launch a poll now, and we would love to hear your feedback. Feedback is really invaluable to us. It's the first time that we're running the Innovation Impact Festival, not Innovation. And also, if you have kind of more feedback, please do send them through to fea@events@education.org.uk. But also just to kind of remind you that there's some brilliant sessions happening across the 2 weeks. So just after this at 5 o'clock, there's 2 sessions, one on writing an effective and engaging impact report. There's also one on the Innovation Award as well with Cheyenne, who's with us today to learn a bit more about the award and some application tips. And then tomorrow we have some great sessions, including one on theory of change, which we mentioned earlier, which should be really interesting for you that are in the room that are early stage innovators and entrepreneurs. So Shan, is the poll up? Great. So if you could please just give us a kind of a response to those 2 questions. 4 questions, apologies. Hopefully they will have popped up for you. Oh, great, we're seeing some votes coming through now. Half of the people have answered those. Great, nearly there. Brilliant, a couple more people to go. Great. So just as we're waiting for those last 2, just a reminder that if you can't join any of the sessions, we will be sharing recordings afterwards, but do really encourage you to join what you can live and dip in and out if that needs to be the case, and look forward to seeing a lot more of you across the 2 weeks. There's just 2 more people to sing that need to vote. Let us know if you're having any issues.
Cool. While we're waiting for the 2 people, I just wanted to reiterate, and this is something C1 said as well, like all of these sessions that she was talking about, theory of change, building a brand, these are for your development, developing your idea, but I just wanted to reiterate that we don't necessarily expect you to have all of this in place for the application. So it's kind of your development, which happens in parallel with the application process. And there are separate workshops that are specifically focused on the application. And there's one later today if you haven't attended one already. Cool.
Great, thanks, Shayan. Okay, so we've got 100% of you who have responded to that poll now, which is great. So without kind of further ado, I will let you go, and hopefully we'll see you later on for our last 2 sessions on the day. But thanks again to Amanda, and thanks for you all for joining in and really kind of engaging with those breakout rooms. See you soon.